Okay, welcome back everybody. Hope you had a chance to go through the virtual exhibit area and take advantage of some of our tech talks. Don't forget we're raffling off a iPad, one per day for folks that have gone into and interacted with every booth. Get your name put in that drawing. Make sure you take advantage of that. Our next panel host probably needs no introduction to this crowd, but I'm going to give you a few snippets from his bio anyway. He's currently Director of Cyberspace and Information Dominance and Chief Information Officer at Air Combat Command. And one of his previous commands before that, he was the commander of the White House Communications Agency, and that's just one of 8 other commands he has had over his career. So I'll give you a chance. One of the nice things about the virtual format, you can actually click into that bio, but let me not take any more of his panel's time and just introduce Brigadier General Chad Raduege. I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit.
Well, thanks for the promotion, Rich.
Friend of the symposium, friend of the chapter, and longtime participant here, but let me turn it over to Chad.
Well, thanks, Rich, and to the men and women of the Rocky Mountain Cyberspace Symposium. It is great to be back. What a fantastic venue. It is my pleasure to return to kind of the home state of Colorado, and always enjoy this particular venue. It is different this year in the virtual environment, but I'm absolutely a pleasure to be here in person and share the stage with a couple of friends and bring in some virtual friends as well from around the Air Force. To Vanessa, to Phil, and to Rich, to the production team here at the Rocky Mountain Cyberspace Symposium, thanks for your wonderful support. This is truly a highlight of every year, and I enjoy being here when appropriate. I'm honored to be part of this panel. I was reminded this morning that sometimes being part of a panel is easy. And in this case, it is easy, because I'm going to tee up what I think is a remarkable panel of professionals that really need no introduction themselves. If you have spent this second day with the symposium, yesterday you were treated to a couple of highlights. You heard Lieutenant General Wegeman introduce several of the digital disruptors and the things that they're doing, the challenge paradigms, to attack policy, to challenge the norm, to bring in new technology and implement it in ways that we haven't seen before. And those digital disruptors are really doing some fantastic things. You also heard from our Department of the Air Force Chief Information Officer, Ms. Lauren Knausenberger. And she really laid out her vision for what she's trying to do to build that rock-solid digital foundation and really push our Department of the Air Force, so that's air and space, really into the new realm. Really excited to hear her vision, and really excited to be a wingman with both of those senior leaders, as I think that we're doing some really impressive things across our department. So, if you got to hear those presentations yesterday, I will tell you that the panel that you're going to hear from this morning really are the implementers. They're taking the digital disruptors, they're translating that. They're looking at the vision that Ms. Knausenberger is laying out, they're figuring out how to get there. So these are the implementers that are doing some really, really exciting things across our Department of the Air Force, and I can't wait for you to hear from them. Now, in the event that you're just joining today for the first time, and you didn't get to hear those fantastic keynote presentations yesterday, what I can tell you is you're catching the movie midstream, and that's okay, because what you're going to hear is a little bit of around the world of cyber and IT in our Department of the Air Force. And you'll hear from the folks that are making it a reality, and you're going to hear kind of a quick update on some of the key initiatives that they're all leading. So really exciting panel, and I'm absolutely honored to be part of this. Please put in your questions throughout the panel. We're going to manage accordingly. I understand that it goes into a question bank, and I will get those questions and then try and distribute it accordingly throughout the panel and make sure that we highlight the top things that are on your mind. And so I look forward to helping drive that. Well, ladies and gentlemen, to kind of kick things off and perhaps baseline this panel a little bit, I wanted to highlight, I thought, some kind of guiding principles that our new Chief of Staff of the Air Force has been talking about in just the first 6 months of his tenure as our chief. What is interesting about today's panel is that you got to hear a lot from our Space Force. Ms. Erin Miller kicked things off talking about the Space ISAC this morning. This afternoon you'll hear from Lieutenant General Whiting, Lieutenant General Thompson on some of the things that are going on in our Space Force. So the guiding principles that Chief of Staff of the Air Force Brown is talking about really focused on the Air Force, but I think equally applicable to our Space Force as well. So how about these as a reminder that the force that we have today really needs to evolve quickly, and it needs to accelerate, and it needs to become the force that we need for the future to meet the adversaries, to meet the demands of the future. And so how about these as a couple of guiding principles that will set a foundation for this panel? Uncontested air, and I'll put space in parentheses, dominance is not assured. So that's principle number one. Principle number two, good enough today will fail tomorrow. This speaks directly to us. We have to continue to push the paradigms. We need those digital disruptors to help us think about how to change things and how to rapidly keep up with technologies and trends that are going on in the world today. Collaboration within and throughout is necessary to succeed. And I think this is a prime example of why these AFCEA events are so important. It brings together our active duty military, total force military. It brings together academia. It brings together industry and allows us to collaborate in ways that perhaps we don't get to do on a daily basis. But hear what's going on, to challenge our own paradigms, to think about things as a group and find solutions that we need for our nation. So I think that's a very good third guiding principle. The final one is that empowered airmen, and again, I'll put in parentheses, guardians, are able to solve any problem. And so you got to hear about that from Ms. Knassenberger yesterday, from General Wegeman yesterday, of how do you establish the mechanism to listen to those fantastic young airmen and young guardians that have grown up in a different society, that have seen the way that technology and collaboration is working, and how do we bring those ideas into to our force and drive us for the future. So I think that those guiding principles that Chief Brown has laid out for us are spot on for this transition day of both the cyber and the air component, but also the space component. And so we have assembled a fantastic group that will look forward to sharing some ideas with you. The way that I like to run panels is to introduce each speaker one at a time and give them the stage, let them offer some opening comments, and then we will circle back as an entire group at the end to go through some questions and answers. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to introduce our first panelist this morning, Ms. Tracy Russo. Tracy is part of our Air Combat Command A6 team, and I've gotten to see Tracy's energy and vision and passion for the last several years working side by side with her. And as she has assumed a new role, I thought that she was the perfect panelist to bring in to talk about some of the important things that are going on in the data world. Tracy brings an elaborate background of both active duty and GS time, serving a lot of time in the Space Force. What was Space Force before it was Space Force. But she brings a lot of great experience from Colorado Springs and around the world. But more importantly, Tracy has joined the Air Combat Command team. She has been, quite frankly, a digital disruptor. She has been in some very important meetings, guiding discussions about how do we evolve Kessel Run. You got to hear about that yesterday. How do we evolve our Air Operations Center and think about a new construct in the way that we're doing business? She has been kind of pushing the envelope on building a global command and control mesh, and she's been doing some remarkable things there. Just recently, we stood up a new position that we call our Command Data Officer, and this is kind of working directly with General Wegeman and General Kelly as Commander of Air Combat Command to think through what is the dynamics that needs to happen on the way that we share and deliver and rally around our data. And so this new role that Tracy is leading is spot on, and she's bringing her talents to a new level. And so Tracy, I'm going to toss it over to you and see what you have to offer the group. So ladies and gentlemen, Ms. Tracy Russo. Tracy, over to you.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the introduction. You did a better introduction of me than I would ever do. Hopefully you can hear me okay. We were testing the microphone a little bit ago. Data is near and dear to my heart. It is one of those things that a lot of people overlook. They look at networks, they look at transport paths, they look at how do we protect all of these mechanisms to get information, but they forget that the information itself is the key component of our warfighters' mission and of our decision making. So when we look at data, and we look at how we protect data, if we could take all of the areas away that are distracting us from protecting the data, what do we have left? We've got MDTs that focus on so many pieces and parts, it's very difficult for them to focus on everything. So how do we collapse that in a way that allows them to protect where our data stores are at, rather than worrying about necessarily the transport mechanisms that take them from place to place? And when we look at getting information to the warfighter as we need to, you know, from and to the end of the spear, out in the field where they're at, they're not necessarily going to have pieces of equipment that we are prepared to send data to. But how do we work that? If we can protect the data itself, it shouldn't matter. We should be able to get them data on any device that they happen to have available to them in order to continue the mission and move forward. So looking at data, our data is our most critical asset. If you look across everything that we do, data is behind it. And in order to make smart decisions and make faster decisions, we have to have that data visible to the people that need it, when they need it, how they need it, and any capability that they happen to have available to them at that moment. And so our goal is very clear. It's not necessarily easy to get there, though.
Okay,
Thanks.
Tracy, great comments. You've been doing a lot of remarkable work of really laying the foundation, and I have a couple of follow-up questions that have already come in that we'll get at the end. I think the experience that you're doing in the Air Force and really taking advantage of what our Space Force has been doing for a number of years and the way that you're integrating in. So look forward to that continued dialogue. So thanks for your comments, Tracy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is my privilege to introduce our second panelist, and he is a friend that I have known for a number of years. He is a graduate of Purdue University. So Kevin, boiler up. Jenna Wagaman is boilering up in the crowd. You have quite a fan base going. Kevin, apparently you got the memo that this is Mustache March. And so I'm going to look at that upper lip and think that you probably started a little early, or you really grow a quick beard. My friend, it's my pleasure to welcome you. You bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to our panel. You're a career cyber and IT professional that has been on the front lines. We got a lot of battle scars together, trying to run the AFNet at the time with 24th Air Force, a commander of the 83rd Network Operations Squadron, and just doing some fantastic things. He has been involved at all levels of our staff agencies at the Pentagon, out in the Pacific Theater, really bringing a great perspective. A technologist at heart, very technically sound and astute. He is currently serving as our commander of the 690th Cyberspace Operations Group. And so all of the things that we heard from Ms. Knossenberger yesterday about focusing on the user experience, focusing on that digital foundation, focused on taking the network that we have today, but really transforming it to the future. And so how do we shrink the AFNet? How do we integrate with what we're doing from an industry side with our enterprise IT as a service? So Operation Flamethrower, you heard that term yesterday as well. All of these initiatives, all of these visions are being implemented by the men and women of the 690th Cyberspace Operations Group under the command of Colonel Kevin Kirsch. So Kevin, my friend, thanks for being part of this panel. We look forward to your comments. Over to you.
Hey, thank you, sir. As always, that was way too generous of an introduction. For the record, this mustache did start on the 1st of March. And all of those polite and wonderful things you said, I have to say it probably all starts in the beginning. Going all the way back to 1999 when Rich Genoso was my BCOT instructor down at Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi. It all started from his fantastic instruction 24 years ago. So a couple of thoughts that I would love to share with the assembled audience and really to hear some feedback on. Certainly can dive into some more on Roll IT and flamethrower building from what we were all discussing yesterday. But we'd also like to talk a little bit about an experiment that we're running here inside of the 688th Cyber Wing. And again, I stress that this is an experiment. Nothing is official until the paperwork goes up to Air Combat Command and is approved or disapproved. But walking through the lenses that the Chief of Staff put out for us over the last couple of months, really the last year and a half, we realized any number of things that made us have to take a hard look at ourselves and facing with a problem statement of how do we best organize ourselves to be able to detect and respond to things going on in our networks on NIPR and SIPR and JWICs, whether they are user incidents, user experience issues, security incidents, interfacing with other government organizations, interfacing with industry as ITAS comes along, and realized to the Chief's second point that what was good enough today or yesterday was not enough for us to be able to organize ourselves to detect and respond. And I'm proud to say that we did a number of engagements with industry, including right here at Rocky Mountain a year ago. I remember pulling Sheila Wooten aside, after a keynote address and just asking her at length about how her company was organized. Nate Magnan on the exhibit floor, and I used last year's Rocky Mountain as an opportunity to hear firsthand from industry how they were organized when it came to their network operations and integrating those with their security operations. And so again, that collaboration both within and without, and found that if we were going to truly empower our airmen to solve problems, we really had to do kind of two things. One, have a dedicated focus on a network operations center, the AFNOC, and a security operations center, the AFCERT. And as we went down that lane, realized that there were a couple of redundancies in the way. For example, the 690th Cyber Operations Group sitting in between the squadrons and the wing staff. And so while I am still officially the 690th COG commander, we're experimenting with setting that layer aside and just going straight from a cyber wing A2, A3, coordinating all of those things directly with the squadron. So a slight update to my business cards if the experiment holds true. But again, I can't thank enough the folks at Rocky Mountain last year or AFCEA Alamo Ace here in San Antonio. Our opportunity to hear from industry was invaluable to help us figure out how we could best organize to detect and respond.
Thanks for your comments, Kevin. You've set a good foundation. I know that there's going to be a couple of questions on the knock and sock approach. That is an industry best practice and model. We'd be interested to hear how that experimentation is going. We'll get to you in the Q&A. So thanks for offering some initial comments. I'm going to transition to our third panelist, and I will tell you that this energetic leader, this seasoned IT professional that's been around our business for a number of years has been driving some remarkable change. So Colonel Andy Dippolito, a good friend out in the USAFE theater, has been really pushing the envelope. A lot of the things that were talked about yesterday from a digital disruption standpoint and from a vision of where we are kind of aligning our IT efforts and that digital backbone to our ABMS strategy and our JADC2 strategy really came to light in just the last several weeks in the USAFE theater under really the charge of our good friend Andy Dippolito. He is a seasoned commander. He has commanded at the squadron level up in Alaska. But for the last 7 years, he's been on a European vacation around the Ramstein area on the staff and in group command, and really leading a whole bunch of fantastic airmen across the European theater. He is currently serving as our USAFE in Africa A6, and is bringing an energy and a passion and a translation from General Harigian of exactly what we need to do to push the envelope a little further. So he is indeed a digital disruptor and a digital translator, and I'd like to turn it over to my good friend over in USAFE, where it's a little later in the afternoon. But Colonel Andy Dippolito, Batman, over to you, my friend.
Hey, sir, thanks for the great introduction. I'll tell you, it's an absolute honor to be part of this, and I would like to thank you, General Raduege, for hosting this and for inviting me to be part of this. You are a true friend, and you're a great leader of our A6 community. I also like to thank our esteemed colleagues. Couldn't be in a better crowd, so really excited to be with you. And then to each of you that are attending, either virtually or physically, I just want to say thank you for being part of this. This is important. During COVID, it's difficult. We need to be physically together, but we just can't right now. And I know that adds context, and it's just much better to be together. But during this time, we have to find a way to continue to communicate, and we're doing that today. And I think that that's very powerful. And to echo you, General Raduege, I think it's really important that we continue to talk to, especially, as a total force, we talk to our industry partners. It's really important that we talk about the gaps and seams that we have, the capabilities that we need, so that our industry partners can better understand what's important to us, and then they can share the capabilities and the services they have to offer to make us a more effective fighting force. So that's my preamble. And by the way, I'm not a cat. I hope I'm not a cat out here, but I'm really excited to be here. So I was brought on board to bring some reflections on the JADC2 ABMS demo or experiment out here at Ramstein. I could not be more excited and enthusiastic about what we've achieved and what we have yet to achieve as an Air Force. So Joint All Domain Command and Control is an important concept. It's a DoD concept now, along with ACE being kind of an Air Force concept. And I'll tell you that they're not mutually exclusive. You need to be able to fight at the tactical edge. So I'd like to reflect just for a few minutes about the way I see JADC2, right, and some of the things that we've learned, and then we can open it up with Q&A. So if you've heard me speak on JADC2 before, it's really a simple concept. It's really about the art and science of being able to make decisions. But under the hood, it's a lot more than that. So when you talk about it and you unpack it, it's Boyd's OODA loop. And the thing that's great about it is we use technology to heighten the speed of that OODA loop. So when you observe, orient, decide, and act, it allows you to seize the initiative, dictate the pace of battle, and compete. And I can't tell you how important that is in today's environment. I'm a product of the Academy. 1990, I was at Jax Valley as in my basic training, and that's when Saddam Hussein invaded Kuwait. And we've been a nation at war for about 30 years. But we face new challenges, and the challenges are akin to what we faced in World War II. So it's really important that we kind of restructure and think about it that way, per General Brown's message. So this is all predicated on information technology and modern technology. So you're going to hear terms like AI, ML, big data, right? High-speed transport, cloud. And they all reside partially on the AFNet, right? But it's about pushing large amounts of data, whether it's structured or unstructured, to the UDL and cloud. It's also about AI and ML. Just let's take an example, right? It's about making sensor to sensor connections faster, taking the airman out of the loop, so you don't have human error, and so that you can do things faster. And that's what's so darn important right now. Okay, so really, what's the thesis of what I have to say today? It's all about opportunity. So information technology and services, what we provide really is the backbone. It's the very fabric of what makes JADC2 tick. So my thought is that we have a supreme opportunity to gain relevance, to become more relevant than ever. IT is the heartbeat that kind of makes everything flow. So just think about the F-35. It's a fantastic sensor. It's a fantastic weapon system. There's no doubt. But if the weak link is the networks that connect to it, it limits it. So think about an analogy. If you have the best iPhone, what is it, 12, whatever the most recent iPhone is, and you don't have 4G or 5G service, it's not much of a device there. I mean, I guess you can use it as a calculator and you can take pictures, but that's about it. So the most important thing is that our networks can't be the weak point. So everyone knows that I love football, and my predecessor, John Sutherland, and I always talk about this. But really, it's about, this is my great analogy, and I'm sorry I have to make you listen to it again. But the bottom line is the team that wins is the one that dictates the pace of the game. So General Wegman gets that with Purdue. I mean, we all get that with football. Now, the teams like Ohio State, like Alabama, like Clemson, even Notre Dame, are not the big lumbering teams from the old Big Ten of yesteryear. They're the ones that are faster on the field and make less mistakes, right? So that's when they're dictating the order of battle and they have the initiative, that's when they win. So let me add another piece to that. Think about the no huddle offense. When the quarterback gets on the line of scrimmage and actually kind of looks and scans the field and understands the defensive set, that quarterback can make a decision, and then that quarterback can then gain the initiative and determine where the weak points are, and that's what translates to JADC2. It's about remaining unpredictable. It's about striking at weak points and using speed and accuracy. This can be used in business, and it can be used in the art of warfare, and that's why we're here today. So, okay, so we just finished the JADC2 demo here. I'm just going to real quickly kind of cover just a couple of lessons learned. The first one is we had hundreds, and I can't tell you how exciting it is. I have a fantastic major that's going to brief Lieutenant General O'Brien here in a couple weeks, and a panel of general officers on what we've learned, and this is great. But there's no big surprises, but they're very important, so I want you to hear them. Okay, so the first one really encapsulates everything, is that the Air Force and the Department of Defense really need to be able to better integrate and leverage modern technologies. This goes to that disruptive technology piece to gain competitive advantage at the speed of war. And we're limited. There's no doubt about that. I'm seeing the gaps from what commercial and industry offers and kind of where we are as an Air Force. Now, these things that limit us are pacing us, right? They're holding us back. Acquisition strategy is one of the things that's a challenge. I don't have really necessarily an answer for you, but I know that, all right, I love our PMOs, but once sometimes equipment gets released and we actually push things into the field, they're already legacy, and we can't afford that. Security controls and the RMF process. I know we've done a lot of work to get that rapid RMF process. However, it's still not where it needs to be for warfare. So individuals like Pam Piazza and Mr. Holtzman, to get us through the JADC2 demo, just crushed it, but they did it on just through sheer brute force. And I would say the most important thing is culture. We need to change our culture, and I think that's what General Brown is really focused on. So we need to figure out what's within the art of the possible and go get it. Okay, so another area that I think we need to look at is that the AFNet and the AFNet-S are not able to really handle big data in the way that we need it today. So that goes to what Tracy was talking about. So I love the fact that Ms. Knossenberger and ACC under General Wegeman and General Raduege are really getting after that rock solid digital infrastructure. That is setting the baseline, and that's incredibly important. So we need big pipes and we need large throughput. There's no doubt about that, and we learned that during our demo. I'll also tell you that we ought not conflate the AFNet with warfighting operations. So the AFNet and some of our commercial services are incredibly important, no doubt. A1, logistics, other things, key enablers require that. But it's truly the weapon system that we also need to focus on if we're going to truly be effective in warfare. So that's incredibly important to me. So I've taken enough time. I just want to push it back to staff or to the panel. Really excited to be here. Thank you, sir.
Well, Batman, thanks for your comments. And as an Academy grad, it sure would have been nice to get you back here for a last hurrah in the Springs area, perhaps offer a different view of Jacks Valley from 1990. Batman, I will tell you that it warms my heart as a Michigan man that you are, that in the rundown of all of those college football teams that have adapted and gone to a new pace of style, you did not put your Michigan Wolverines in that list. So that indeed warms my heart that you recognize that there is still some lymphac in the state up north.
Yeah, it does not warm my heart that they become a basketball school. So I'll see what Jim Harbaugh 2.0 does.
Good luck in March Madness. Batman, really appreciate your reflection and quite frankly, your leadership that helped push through. It was a total team effort. You called out a couple of folks by name, and it was a team effort that got us to that on-ramp 4. And so thanks for your reflection and thanks for your leadership. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it's my opportunity to introduce our lead up, our final pinch hitter here on the panel. He is a fantastic friend as well. I have known Colonel Roy Rockwell for a number of years and have served by his side and watched from afar as he has implemented a fantastic vision. He's a graduate of East Carolina University and brought his talents into our United States Air Force and has been leading from the beginning. He has commanded at the squadron a couple of times, both in the deployed environment, and then he too has some battle scars from the AFNet experience. He was Kevin Kirsch's counterpart in the 561st NOS. Got to watch Rocky's style in command, the way that he brought technology to bear, but focused on the people as well. And was really proud to see his continued escalation through our force. He is now not officially a Space Force member, but he has had the wonderful opportunity of standing up here in the Colorado Springs area what we're calling the Space Force Delta 6 group wing equivalent that is doing some fantastic things already for our Space Force, and Rocky's vision is driving that forward. He has a wealth of experience in both IT and cyber, and I look forward to his reflection. He is joining me here on stage as he is local, but we are properly socially distanced, and so Rocky, I'm going to turn it over to you and say thanks for your comments up front.
Oh, thank you, sir. It's great to be here, and thank you for the invite to be part of this panel. As I looked at the folks that you chose to be on this panel, you know, there's connective tissue across all 5 of us. And as you mentioned, the battle scars that you and Kevin and I endured back when you were the 690th Cyber Operations Group Commander, you know, that tied us together, you know, as battlefield does, operations do. And so I'm greatly appreciative of Kevin's partnership through those years. I don't think we would have survived as we went through the AFNet migrations if we wouldn't have been teammates. And so thanks for your leadership and your friendship. And Batman, you know, I stood on your shoulders out at PACAF as we built out what we called PACnet and is now rolled into what is known as ABMS Device One Secure View. You know, you and Michael Ray and Dex Harrison, you guys all started that when you were out at PACAF. And then Tracy, I am a huge advocate of data. And I agree with you, it's really all about the data and getting that data to the warfighter so we can improve warfighting decision-making, ensure they have the opportunity. Because our adversaries, they're already there in the big data platforms. They're already using machine learning and analytics to improve their warfighters' decision-making, what the probabilities of different scenarios and outcomes are. And so we have to advance our maturity in those areas, in those arenas, if we're gonna be competitive on the battlefield in the future. And so Tracy, again, huge advocate of what you're doing, and I fully agree that we've got to make this about data and how do we bring the data together. One of our biggest challenges out at PACAF, and as I worked with Lieutenant General Skinner as the Indo-PACOM J6, was bringing all of the services together in order to ensure we had a common warfighting platform to fight from. Because our biggest challenge was we were all on different SIPRNet networks and we couldn't share data. And so, ensuring that those analytics and machine learning capabilities could even process, they had to have access to that data. And today, it's all stovepiped away. So we've got to get better. And we've got to be demanding customers on commercial industry to help us build a multi-level security cloud environment where data can come in and be sectioned out into its classifications, and then those who have access at those different levels can get to that data. And so, that I haven't said anything about the Space Force, but I'm just leaning on everyone's what everyone's talked about. But what a huge opportunity to be in the Space Force, to be a plank holder, to have the opportunity to command the 50th Network Operations Group for 4 short weeks. I was the last one to do that, and that, what a huge legacy comes out of the 50th Network Operations Group, sir, as you well know. Mm-hmm. And then to be able to stand up Space Delta 6 as first commander, I pinch myself every day at the opportunity that I've been given, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity. And General Whiting will talk about later in his keynote, and Lieutenant General Thompson will talk about the cyberspace roadmap that General Raymond just approved last week, and our path forward for how we're going to be able to build out the capabilities to defend space and our mission systems moving forward. And so I know he's excited about that, and he will tell you that it's all about ensuring we have, from a Space Force perspective, having a combat-ready, intel-led, cyber-secure space operations. And those are his priorities in that order. So thank you, sir, for the opportunity, and I look forward to the panel.
Well, Rocky, thanks for being here as part of the panel. I think you bring a unique perspective. I think the things that you already talked about in the way that General Whiting is kind of laying out the future, and General Raymond, remarkable in the way that you're tying together. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have kind of run through some opening comments, and questions are starting to fly in, and so we appreciate that. And so I'd like to take the remaining time to just allow this virtual group to get together and interact with one another and feed off each other's ideas. And Tracy, I'm going to come to you with the first question, because it seemed like everyone kind of hit on data a little bit in their prepared remarks, or acknowledged the importance of data. You've been doing a lot of great work, kind of on the heels of what Space Force, Air Force Space Command before had already put in place. So I'd like for you to just kind of tackle how you're working with the Space Force to bring in implementation of a data strategy, and what lessons can we learn and apply across our entire Department of the Air Force. So Tracy, over to you with the first question.
Okay, that's a big question. So we're working with Space Force specifically because they have the unified data platform that they've built. And we actually brought in Major Braniker from Space Force to help us not only understand what's going on behind the scenes on the Space Force's program, but how can we do something to get ACC data, and then again, Air Force-wide data, visible like they've done in their platform at the UDL. Some of the things that we've learned that they have done is, first of all, they prioritize their data and they identified their critical data sources. These are things that we're working on right now, is how do we identify critical data sources? And if I go out and just ask people, what's your critical data source? The answer I usually get is everything. But when we start to break it down by missions and functional areas and build use cases out that says, okay, here's a scenario, what data sets do you need? We're able to start digging into and figuring out where this data actually exists and what critical data is really needed in order to go after a certain mission. The U.S. Space Force did the same thing. And so we're following in their footsteps, going after these critical data sets so that we can ensure that those data sets are cataloged and visible, not just for us, but for any other service or mission need. They may not have direct access to the data, but that way they know the data exists and they can gain access to the data based on the mission. So that's the first thing that we're doing with the Space Force. The second thing is that we've built our governance structure here at ACC, and we followed a lot of what the U.S. Space Force had done as well. Our governance structure, and I know people hear governance and they are like, oh no, bureaucracy, slow it down, let's make it difficult. Our governance structure is set up so that it not only brings visibility to what you're doing, but it also lends for prioritization of efforts, allows the leadership to look across the areas to see if there's efforts that are coinciding with each other that maybe could merge so we can save some funds and solve problems simultaneously. It also allows us to delegate or create thresholds. When do you need to get certain levels of approval based on, what is this that you're trying to do? It provides a flexible framework to go after managing not only the data assets, but looking across all of the Air Force, not just strictly ACC, because we have to keep in mind the joint fight. We have to keep in mind the ABMS efforts. We can create stovepipe solutions that only serve us, but then we're going to be in the same situation when we go into a joint fight. We're not able to share information. So partnering with the ABMS on-ramps, partnering with the JADC2 team leads, making sure that the efforts that we're doing are shareable, are flexible, and are aligned. And U.S. Space Force is one of those areas that we're doing this at. We're also doing with Army. We've got an Army Air Force working group where we're going after data sharing and how can we share. And they have a lab, and we're trying to gain access to the lab so that we can work jointly in the lab to develop solutions that not only support us in ECC and in the Air Force, but also the Army, so that we can come together and collaborate and build these joint solutions. Did I answer both of those questions?
Tracy, I think you did, and I really appreciate your perspective. At the beginning, we introduced you as the Deputy Command Data Officer, and so I do want to offer a shout out. We have hired a highly qualified expert in Dr. Barry Tanju to come in and bring his wealth of experience from outside of the military in and couple that with Tracy's energy that she is running. She has stood up a data office. She name dropped a couple of the fantastic action officers that are already part of that team. But the work that you're doing, Tracy, to kind of deconstruct, to build those partnerships, to build that compelling case of the importance of data and how do we rally around that, I think is going to be valuable moving forward. At some point here, maybe at the end, if we have some time, I know you've been working on some use cases to get after this, because this, when we start talking about data and rallying around data, it's not just a cyber IT thing. Data cuts across every mission set, and so some of those use cases that you're doing, I know, highlight some of that work. So thanks for that fielding the first question. We do appreciate your expertise. Kevin, I'm going to come to you for the second question. You've inspired a couple of folks to offer some questions about the organize component that you talked about, the knock and sock experimentation that is underway. We would assume with an experimentation on organizational design and the work that you've already done to talk with industry partners to see how they're doing it, that you would have some sort of guiding principles for applying the evaluation against. And so would you mind highlighting in the knock-sock approach, what are some of those guiding principles that you're looking at, as you perhaps race toward implementation that says, yes, this is indeed the way to go in our Department of the Air Force?
Sure. So to that point, again, what we're trying to hit is, are we able to detect and respond, as quickly as humanly or even inhumanly possible, based on the technology. And so as we go through one phase after another, there are a couple of different criteria we use, but broadly, very broadly, it has to do with how well we're able to pull together the different pieces that need to be able to respond to something and measure out whether we are more efficient and able to get at it faster than we were previously. For example, last November, when we stood up a robust A staff for the 688th Cyber Wing to help pull a lot of the administrative churn off of the squadrons, we found that very, very measurably, the squadrons had more time at their disposal to be able to detect and to respond to things. And so, hooray, in that sense, it seemed as if the big A staff was a success. As we continued the experiment, though, it only took us a couple of weeks to realize that having both an A2-3 and a group commander was not by any means an efficient measure to industry. And actually, this was actually even to industry, that was a no-brainer. It was a conversation with Roy Rockwell, was one of many people I bounced this off of, where in the Space Force, they don't have multiple layers like that. The Delta 6, if you were to translate that to Air Forceism, it's a hybrid of what a group and a wing would be. And so, again, by looking at our criteria, did it make us faster? Did it make us more efficient? Holding on to a legacy construct of having something flow from the wing to the group to a squadron, as we looked at metrics and measured ourselves, the answer was no. And very frankly, as a group commander, I was in the way of the wing being as efficient as possible. And so, again, going back to those measurements, made the decision as a wing to experiment. I can't stress that enough. Nothing is official until the OCRs are submitted and approved. It was going to be more efficient, to help us to organize better, to eliminate, to experiment with eliminating a structure of pulling out the cyber groups and collapsing them into the A staff. So metrics change the measurements change with each phase of our experimentation, but almost every single one of them comes down to, are we getting faster at being able to do this? We also recognize, though, that in addition to becoming faster and more efficient through better organization, there are technologies that are absolutely going to help us out as well. Working with Tracy and others as far as taking our data and automating various portions of it, so that we don't have to put a human in the loop to some of the things that we see so very, very often. But again, so many of these things we learned from industry, either site visits or forums like Rocky Mountain.
Kevin, thanks for walking us through that. For those of us that are familiar with kind of the legacy construct of the 688th Cyberspace Wing, we know that there's an engineering component as well. You talked about the NOC, you talked about the SOC. Is there an engineering component that you're looking at in this experimentation?
Absolutely, I appreciate the reminder. So, if you were to sketch the org chart as it looks today during the experimentation, you have a NOC, made up of multiple squadrons that have a network operations focus, and a SOC, made up of two squadrons that have a primary security operations focus, and then the 38th Engineering Squadron, having them sets that they're able to provide support to either one. And again, that was one of those things we realized, going as we were walking through the experiment. There were so many opportunities where we lost out on bringing the engineering capabilities to bear early in a problem, where we might be chomping on something for a week or more, when if we had brought the engineering side in on the earliest stages, that we could have solved something even faster. And so today, to empower airmen to solve those big, hairy problems, and to allow the units to collaborate even faster, we have those squadrons all together, in the ops sync, to be able to talk through what's happening on the net ops side, what's happening on the security ops side, where engineering is plugged in, and do we need to help push them more in the net ops lane or the security ops lane to help to get after something.
Great. Thanks for that explanation, Kevin. That's very well done. We appreciate it. Batman, we got a couple of questions that have come in for you. I'm going to start with one that seems to be at the top of the list. you did a really remarkable job of talking about the ABMS and JADC2 opportunity and how IT integrates in there. You talked about the things that, that you have experienced or reflected upon. You talked about better integration. You talked about the RMF process. You talked about the culture that is required. The question that, that seems to be on everyone's mind is, what do you see as the biggest IT obstacle to achieving JADC2?
The biggest IT obstacle. Wow. Okay, so I think that the biggest IT obstacle is that our AFNet or AFNet-S are just not capable of actually managing the demands of what JADC2 actually requires at this time. And I think that if you actually kind of peel the onion a little bit back, there's a lot of reasons for that. First of all, I think that as everyone knows, the AFNet was a best, kind of like it was a best effort. It was created, but it doesn't necessarily meet the needs of what we need today. So I think that, you know, kind of to answer how do we actually get after it, the first step is to get on board with Ms. Knossenberger and with ACC's thoughts and plan to establish a rock solid digital infrastructure. That is the starting of that. That's the foundational effort that we need to move to our JADC2 environment. Secondly, I think that one of the other things, and it may not necessarily be technical, but we need to empower our airmen. I'll tell you, our base networks are extremely complex, and as we pushed a lot of the services up and centralized them, we didn't realize that we left a lot of residual work back on the base level. So that's something that we really need to think about. And kind of to that point, you know, we have too many cooks in the kitchen. When you look at a base network, think about all the different organizations that are stakeholders. And some of those stakeholders may be thousands of miles away and may not have the operational context as to what's important there. So you have the 690th, you have the Base Comm Squadron, you have the 691st, you have DISA, you have the 83rd NOS, you have many organizations that all have a part to play, and they're all doing their level best on different time zones, okay? But at the same time, it's very hard to see to a network when you have so many players with all dissimilar interests. So I think that's a big challenge for us. How do we get after that? We need to re-examine who's on our networks. We need to again support the efforts by Ms. Knossenberger and by ACC, by General Wegman and yourself, General Raduege. We need to look at, I think, asking some tough questions, some honest questions. All right, why is our SDC so large? Why does it require gaming rigs to run the SDC? You know, I think that goes to Operation Flamethrower. We need to think through this. We need to ask ourselves tough questions. And I'm kind of going off on a rant, but I think it's really important that I say that the most important thing we need to do is communicate our message to the operators. And I think that we're doing that. I think that if you kind of look at the panel level and you look at the MAJCOM commander conferences, I think that we are now kind of the cool kids on the block. There's a lot of emphasis and a lot of focus on what we bring to the fight. So I think that it's going to take some time. I think it's going to take a lot of work. But I think that we've already kind of started that process with Ms. Knossenberger and with ACC in terms of the rock solid digital infrastructure.
Thanks for those comments, Batman. Cool kids on the block. It's a good place to be right now. We have a lot on our shoulders, and we've got to meet the demand signal that is out there and get after it. So I'm going to circle back on some of your comments and let Kevin come in here at the end. But before I do, there's another question that has come in, one that we're going to bring over to you, Rocky. You talked about being the commander of the 50th NOG and the legacy of commanders that have been in that important mission set. And you said that you were only in that job for 4 weeks.
Yes, sir.
So I'm interested to hear the legacy 50th NOG and your current Delta 6. Really, what is the mission of Delta 6 and why is it different than the 50th NOG?
Thanks. Great question, sir. So really, what we did was we took the mission of the 50th NOG and we moved it into Delta 6, and that was the space access mission of the satellite control network, which we still maintain and operate. And then we stood up 2 cyberspace squadrons to begin to build out the initial foundation of our defensive cyber operations capability to defend primarily at first 4 mission systems: the SCN, SBIRS, which is Delta 4's mission set, missile warning, and that's out at Buckley, and that's done by the 62nd Cyberspace Squadron. And then the 61st Cyberspace Squadron, which is focused on the SCN, AHF, and GPS. And those are the first 4 mission systems that we're focused on defending and developing our CSSP, our Cybersecurity Service Provider certification. So every service has to have a CSSP. And the beauty is we are able to leverage the Air Force's CSSP for admin Genser on Nipper and Sipper and voice. And we can focus primarily, specifically in the Space Force, on our mission systems and warfighting platforms. So a huge advantage for us because of what the Air Force has already done for us from that CSSP. And then we will grow mission systems and add mission systems to that CSSP as we move forward. I got to give a big shout out to my SCN mission because they often feel like they're forgotten, and they are not, and we have to do things to modernize our ground station networks. Our antennas, our first SCN antenna went up in 1958, and our current UIs, or user interfaces for the SCN, are DOS based. And they will expire here in, I believe it's 2022, 23 timeframe. And so we're expeditiously working to get off of that DOS-based UI. But the ground station network still, one contact per antenna. We've got to move to more modern type phased array capability that can do multiple contacts per antenna. So we're really pushing that hard within the Space Force, and they are really starting to get after, and that's one of General Raymond's key initiatives, is to modernize our ground station networks across the Space Force. So.
Thanks, Rocky. I was watching the Hollywood Squares a little bit, and I could tell, Rocky, as you were talking about SCN and SBIRS and GPS and all of those things, a little love language for Tracy. Early in Tracy's career, she spent some time going through a lot of those mission sets. And so, Tracy, I was reading your eyes. I saw the love language that was applying. I know it's good to hear. Tracy, the next question is really for you. You've heard a couple of times from our panelists and some of the questions that have come in. They're talking about the culture, and culture takes time. And I'd be interested to hear your perspective from a data side of how culture is being or data is being injected from the data strategy really into the current processes like requirements and acquisition. What sort of work are you doing on that front in the initial efforts?
Culture is tough. It is very tough. And data is no different. It's a complete culture change, looking at data rather than just focusing on protecting networks and protecting the data itself. So some of the things that we're doing to go after the culture change is starting to use data language that is common. SAF has been significantly involved in standardizing some of the data terminology so that we can use the same words across the board, and also going after the prove it type analogies. What does the data say? Instead of going, hey, what should we do here? And everybody's like, well, we've always done it this way, or I feel in my gut that it should be. We start asking that question, what does the data say? When somebody says, hey, I implemented this tool and it significantly improved our process, the question is, well, where's your data to show that it improved your process? How can you prove that it improved your process? What data shows that? And so starting to use that language and push that language out there. And we're asking the leaders to use the language. We're asking the data stewards that we have out there to start using the language. Just continuing to use the language starts to bring data to the forefront. There's a lot of really data savvy people out there that understand the criticality of data. But then there's a lot of people out there that are very fearful of risk, and they're afraid to take and make a change because they've always done it a certain way. So we're trying to figure out in the data world, how do we push a culture change, communicate the words and start showing the actions, but then also going after not only those people that are comfortable in the data world, but those people that are uncomfortable in the data world by making it safe for them to take a risk. It's okay to break something. It's okay to fail. We're doing very, very small efforts that we want to do small and move fast and eventually grow. So it's okay for those first efforts to stumble a little bit. As we get better at it, it will continue to grow. So bringing those people that are afraid in at the front end and using that data language whenever we communicate things starts to build that culture change. And so that's what we're doing using the DoD data strategy and the new implementation plan that SAF signed out about a week ago. We're in the ACC building an operational plan to identify how can we operate under the implementation plan and the data strategy, who is responsible for what parts of the implementation plan across the command, and how do we give them the authority to go after those pieces? Over.
Yeah, thanks, Tracy. Boy, I tell you, you were speaking a love language as well. There were several thumbs up here in the room, and I saw our virtual teammate, Batman, online, totally agreeing with everything you were saying. You are driving a culture change, and we really appreciate the common language that you're using, but really attacking some of those legacy processes and figuring out how to bring that culture change in. So thanks for what you're doing. Kevin, I'm going to come to you for the next question. I don't think Batman was being adversarial in his critique of the AFNet, of how big and bulky and non-maneuverable it really was or is. But I want to give you a chance to kind of respond, because I think you've been doing some remarkable things from your current seat in the 690th COG to look at what the AFNet of the future would kind of look like. A lot of that is evolutionary, but some of that is revolutionary. And so we've talked a little bit about Operation Flamethrower. You've talked a little bit about the role IT, the user experience side. But will you kind of talk about some of the efforts that are ongoing on shrinking the AFNet and what you're looking at there?
For sure. So if I walk down memory lane just a little bit, I remember getting a phone call from Roy Rockwell, one day around 2014 or so, when he said, "Hey man, do you know that we have the second largest Active Directory network in the world?" And I had no idea that we were that big. And we talked a little bit about who, the next bigger one was. And I'll be honest, at the time, it was kind of a point of pride that we were that large. Today, I think, holy crap, we've got one of the largest AD networks in the world, and that's awfully tough. I would agree that there is a whole lot that's on the AFNet today that might not need to be. And I can offer a couple of vignettes as examples. If I were to pan my camera outside the window here, I don't work on an Air Force base. I'm in an industrial park in the old Fort San Antonio. My neighbors are an Amazon Prime warehouse and a Boeing aircraft depot. There are functions like mine that don't necessarily have to be on an Air Force base. And in the same vein, there are all sorts of things that are on an AFNet that when we first built the thing, we thought it had to be on the network. And I think the last year, the way the Department of Defense has transformed the way that it works because of COVID and the need to do more and more outside of a base. I mean, airmen are doing things on their phones today, or their tablets, or their home computers. And I think all of that speaks to there's a whole lot of data that we care about that should be on the AFNet. There are any number of mission-related systems, like pretty much everything that Batman was talking about ought to be on the AFNet. But in the same way that traditionally we believe that if you were an Air Force function or any DoD function, that you had to be inside of a fence line on an Air Force base. My organization is proof positive that you don't have to sit on an installation to be at your most effective. And in the same way, I don't think we need to have nearly the number of things on the AFNet or the AFNet-S that are on there today. And so 7, 8 years ago, man, it was cool to say that we were one of the largest in the world. Today, I am not nearly as excited that the domain is as large as it is. I want to be able to provide max flexibility and max capability to airmen across all of our security enclaves. But if we really were honest with ourselves, and I think we are being, building a massive network is not nearly as conducive to where we're going as a department of the Air Force than allowing ourselves to shrink and recognize there are so many other ways to access the resources that we need to stay on the AFNet instead.
Thanks, Kevin. Appreciate your answer, and more importantly, appreciate your drive to help reduce that footprint. I think it's going to pay dividends. Batman, you did a great job articulating kind of the on-ramp 4 experience that you had, and you talked a lot about the operational warfighting network. But I'm gonna challenge you a little bit with this question that has come in, and the question is, can you define the difference between business systems and warfighting systems as they support JADC2?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm going to answer that in just 1 second. I have to comment on Tracy's point earlier. I just absolutely loved it. The culture change that we need to have is something that we are not afraid to fail. So we need to learn how to make mistakes, learn from those mistakes. I mean, look at SpaceX, right? So I can't tell you how many times that rocket has failed, but the Dragon capsule has absolutely just done fantastic. And that's the kind of mentality that we have to have, that it's okay to fail. It's okay to learn from those mistakes, and it's okay to move out with new technologies and really truly get after it. So Tracy, that's a great point. Something that I tell my officers is that you'll never get in trouble if you do something that's legal, moral, and ethical. It doesn't gain you something personal, but at the same time, you're just trying to make things better. And that's the mentality we need to have. Okay, now I forgot your question. Go ahead. What was it again, sir?
Yeah, Batman, we're looking for the difference between business systems and warfighting systems and how they interact with JADC2.
Okay, so just think about it from your traditional AFNet. That's what I classify as a business system. You do your work on it. We communicate on it. It's an incredible tool, and it is, in some circumstances, a warfighting system, because A1 can't operate off without it, our SG can't operate without it, or A4, there's certain things with it. So it does have applicability. There's no doubt. We need to concentrate on our AOCs. We need to concentrate on Kessel Run and applications. We need to find ways to communicate better to our, data links, right? TAC-C2. How do we actually have a COP? Here's another one. MPE and fighting with our coalition partners. There's so much wrapped in that we need to do better so that we can actually execute and prosecute war. But I think it really starts with the AOC, and we need to take a deep dive into that. I know that Kessel Run has started. I know that the 603rd, for example, is very interested in that. And I think that cloud and big data can be a big support to that. Imagine an AOC where you don't have a separate weapon system. However, instead of that, you have discrete applications that is an instance like an outpost at your AOC, so that AOC can leverage them. And they can leverage those those applications at the classified level, but also leverage those systems at the coalition level, because that is the key to success, right? So I'm not going to make the mistake of what I said the last time. So the key is that we will always, when you look at it, we're never going to fight alone. So that's incredibly important. Building out our TAC-C2 network, our ability to kind of understand where our aircraft are, where our other forces are, the joint kind of mesh network, that's incredibly important as well. So that's kind of the way I see it in terms of differences. And here's the other piece. It needs to be to the tactical edge. And you need to be able to push cloud to the tactical edge. So there are capabilities out there, whether it's Amazon, whether it's Microsoft, that you can bring in small form factor the ability to have massive amounts of data, virtualized services, be able to connect, still have your cloud capability. If you're disconnected in a DDoS environment, it still can operate. And then when you reconnect, bam, you're back on. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, great response. I appreciate that vision, quite frankly. Great stuff, Batman. Rocky, we have a question that's come in for you. I think what's unique is in our Department of the Air Force, you have the only cyberspace squadron. And so what does the future look like in cyberspace for Space Delta 6?
Well, sir, I'll have to tailor that question a little bit because I don't want to steal Lieutenant General Whiting's thunder for his keynote later as he talks about the cyberspace roadmap and what we intend to build out. But I think what's really exciting is, number one, I want to say thanks to Colonel Hugh Wells for what he handed me in Delta 6, because if it wasn't for his efforts of giving me a foundation that only focuses on cyberspace operations, I don't have to do the comm piece. That is not, comm and cyber are separate in the Space Force. We have moved off the boss IT. Our comm squadron still manages that. And they've taken the mission comm pieces, which I think will be funneled back into the Deltas at some point. But we're building our boss IT flights in those comm squadrons today that will continue to do that boss IT mission until ITAS is delivered. And but my focus, I don't have to focus on any of that. My focus is only purely on cyberspace operations and the SCN. I just want to foot stomp that we still have that SCN mission, which is beautiful because it allows us to what we're seeing at the 62nd Cyber Squadron, because they have been able to capitalize on ITAS, right? The delivery of ITAS to Buckley and the success that they've had. And because of that, they are now truly able to integrate with Delta 4. So 62nd Cyber Squadron is assigned to Delta 6, but they are attached and live with Delta 4 and they're missile warning mission systems. So I have cyber operators sitting in the SIBRs and missile warning ops floor defending their mission systems. So we're really good, as I've grown up in the Air Force, of doing parallel ops. We do really good at cyber ops, we really do good at air ops, intel, space ops, but they're always in parallel, informing, but I don't know that we've ever actually integrated like we're seeing right now at the 67th Cyber Squadron, where that unit is, the Delta commander is talking cyber. He is a space operator, and he understands what cyber brings to the fight. And the beauty is these lieutenants, they understand, my cyber lieutenants understand space, and they can talk to each of the different space areas, so ground, link, launch, and the space segment. So it's a wonderful integration. It's intelligence-led, as I said. The Intel folks, we're partnering with them. They are building their capabilities right along with what cyber is to deliver to each of the different deltas from that perspective. So it's really neat to see how that's all coming together in an integrated way.
Yeah, thanks, Rocky. We got to see that on Monday morning. Had a chance to visit with the mission defense team that was up there, a really robust mission defense team, and the men and women of the 62nd. They are integrated in. They do speak that operational language, and it was just wonderful to see. So thanks for pushing the envelope. Tracy, we have come down to the final 2 minutes, and so I'm going to ask you to give us the 1 minute highlight on some of the data use cases that you and the team are already looking at within Air Combat Command, and perhaps how that will translate across our entire department.
Okay, sir. Well, we've got several use cases and we're building more as we go, looking at pain points across various different mission sets. Some of the really exciting, more mature ones are not necessarily as exciting on, everything, but again, we're starting small and moving fast. So we've got the readiness use cases that we're working with on the A3 community on how do you mission commanders know how many deployable fighter wings they have available to them. And if there's a delta in a fighter wing, can they substitute? How do they know that at a moment's notice without 20 people behind the scenes going through 15 systems to try to figure this information out? So that's an exciting use case that we've got. We've got an FM use case that's really, really mature, actually. We just got it finalized yesterday or the day before. that brings together all these FM systems and provides dashboards so that leaders know what their spend rates are, where their money's going, how it's being used, their contract spends, what are their contractors doing with the money, and how that all displays out. So that's a really exciting pain point that right now most commanders have to have a team of people bring it together. And we're looking at expanding that out for congressional funding. How do you report your congressional funding in a dashboard way that makes it very easy to bring that together? That could be an Air Force wide thing as it goes forward. We've got the history office. How do we digitize the history office? Everybody has history offices in their commands that have stacks and stacks and reams of paper. We have microfiche, microfilm. We're developing a system that allows that not only to be scanned in digitally, but tagged so that it can be searched and it can link smartly using AI and ML. If somebody needs something about how an organization was structured during a fight, it can not only find that information for you, but it can link it to other missions that says, hey, in these missions, this is a similar structure, and this is what was good and bad in that based on the historical records, so that it allows leaders to go back through historical records and see what was done in the past rather than manually going through thousands and millions of pieces of paper.
Yeah.
We've got cyber efforts like MDT.
Hey, Tracy, we're getting the hook. I can see your passion. We love to hear the use cases. And I think what you laid out was that this is not just an IT or cyber data for data's sake. This is really integrating across all the missions. So again, really appreciate the work. To our panelists, I can't thank you enough for the leadership and the vision that you provide on a daily basis. We understand that you're in a very difficult spot. You're translating Ms. Knossenberger's vision of where she wants to go. You're understanding the way that the chief is driving us forward. You're being informed by those digital disruptors that General Wegeman talked about, and you are the implementation. And with that, that means balancing a little bit of the legacy and trying to get to the future as fast as possible. And that puts you in a very precarious situation, but we value what you're doing. And I certainly appreciate your time of coming together as a group and helping tell your story. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been our privilege to offer some time, and look forward to the next time together. Rich, over to you.
Brigadier General Raduege, thank you and the panel very much for your words today. A special shout out to Kevin for that great plug in his opening comments for the show, because one of the things that we're all about is sharing military, active duty, and industry viewpoints and that dialogue back and forth. And I think we may have set a record with the number of questions for your panel. So a lot of engagement, happy to see that. And it was a very good session that I appreciate. And Kevin, don't worry, what happens in Biloxi stays in Biloxi, so that's fine. And we won't go there. Okay, folks, appreciate it. You may have seen on the agenda we don't have an actual luncheon keynote today. That's because we've got a high-power twofer for you this afternoon, where we're going to have some of the top leadership of Space Command come in and continue getting the space perspective on convergence, and we're really looking forward to having them this afternoon. So take advantage of the break right now. Go ahead and go through the exhibit floor, get yourself qualified for that iPad drawing, take advantage of one of the tech talks that are going on at the moment, and we'll see you back here one line down on your agenda at 13:15 Mountain Time this afternoon for the Space Command perspective. So appreciate it, and see you in a little bit.